Hola, mi amigos y mi amigas. Mi amo es Clifford, el pop song profesor. And last weekend, I went to Peru, and that's, why I haven't been posting videos this last week. I know that you're probably manically depressed because you haven't been able to watch new videos from me. Don't worry, I'm coming back. But I went to Peru, and it was insane. It was one of the most insane things that I've ever done, and I want to tell you guys about how I survived. Let me explain. Hey everybody, I'm Clifford Stumby, the pop song professor, and this last weekend I went to Peru for a friend's wedding. The friend's name was Josh. He was getting married to somebody who he had met in Peru named Millie. Well, actually he met her in South Africa, but they were getting married in Peru. Super cool people. And I wanted to go to their wedding. So I heard about it like just a couple of weeks ago and I was like, yo, let's go to this wedding. And it was like, it was kind of expensive, so thanks to everybody who supports me on Patreon. But I had 3 problems that I had to face. Number 1, my Spanish is terrible, and I was going by myself without mi esposita bonita, which means my beautiful wifey, basically, rough translation. And she speaks Spanish mejor than me, but I also had to do this insane travel schedule, and I'll tell you about that in a second, but I wasn't sure that I was going to survive. There were a couple of times on the road where I was like, I'm going to crash and die for sure. And the third obstacle to me going to Peru was that I was gonna get back at 1 a.m. on, the night before I had to teach the earliest class our school teaches at 8:15 a.m. and I still hadn't lesson planned anything. But guys, I was gonna go to Peru. I was gonna see my friend, my really, really good friend, get married, and I was gonna go to a country, nay, a continent I had never been before for just a weekend trip. How bougie. So, Thursday morning, I woke up at 3 a.m. and by 3:30 I was in the car. I drove for 3 hours. And the day before, I had realized that the airport I was flying out of was different from the airport I was flying to. So I do this super complicated travel schedule. So I drove for 3 hours in the early morning. I was so tired. Only the jelly beans I ate kept me awake. And then I hopped on the metro in Washington, D.C. for an hour. And then I hopped in an Uber, half an hour. And then I hopped on a plane. And I had to go all the way down to Florida. And then I hopped on a plane to go to Peru. And I was on this airline that had really tiny seats. So I was super cramped the whole time. But thankfully, I did make it, but it was like 10 o'clock at night. I'd been up since 3 that morning, but thankfully, my friend was there to pick me up, so I made it. But he wasn't there for the first hour that I was there, so I just wandered around telling people, no thank you, I don't want a taxi. But it was great. We hung out, we met up, and then the next morning, I'm like that kid from RV who doesn't sleep basically, and so no matter how late I go to bed, I always wake up early. So I woke up early and nobody else was awake or wanted to do anything. So I was like, how bad of an idea can this be? I'll just grab my phone and I'm gonna go walk out in Lima, Peru by myself. And I didn't get lost and nothing bad happened. It was actually really cool and I really liked it. And later we took a trip to the beach because we were really close to the beach. We were a mile's walk and it was awesome. The whole city, Lima, was beautiful. We were in the Miraflores district. And as we were walking through, this guy came up and tried to sell us these little brass llamas. Let me go grab one real quick. He offered me this llama and he was like, 20 for this llama. And I was like, all right, I'm gonna try to use my Spanish here. So I responded to him like, no, 30. Now, if you're a Spanish speaker, you know that means 30. What I was trying to say was 13. And so eventually I was like, 13, because he was looking at me like I was an idiot. And I got the llama and then I gave him a 20 to pay for it. I was hoping for some change. He's like, oh, no tango, no tango. Sure, you don't have change for a 20. And so he was like, well, we'll just take this other llama instead. So I have 2 llamas now. But I still tried. That's the important thing. I didn't know Spanish very well, but I tried. But that still wasn't anywhere near as difficult as what I did the next morning. But before I tell you about that, just as a quick side note, typically when it comes to weddings, I pride myself on being kind of the person who wants to make sure that the bride and groom are really having a good time and that they're as stress-free as possible. I'll kind of build myself as a wall around the bride and the groom as much as I'm able. And if people come up to them and are like, hey, can you help me with this? Hey, I need help with this. Hey, I'm gonna argue with somebody about this stupid thing over here. I do my very level best to get that person the frick out of the way because these people do not need to be stressed out any more than they already are being. But that still doesn't keep me from messing with the bride and the groom myself. Only in ways that will make people happy though, not in ways that will make people stressed. So we were driving in the car away from the rehearsal, me, the bride and the groom, and a couple other people, and I was telling her like, hey, I actually really want to do this dance that I've created for you. It's an interpretive dance, and at first she was not quite sure what to make of it, but I had like a really sincere face. I was really good at pulling it off, and by the end of it, I had convinced her, I think, and the groom was helping me, I had convinced her to let me do an interpretive dance to Sound of Silence in an EDM style while wearing a chicken suit with Russian-infused dancing as she was preparing to walk down the aisle to kind of warm the crowd up. Part of me thinks that she was just kind of letting me go on and on, but then we told her that like it was a joke, and she was like, wait, are you kidding? So I'm pretty sure that I almost got invited to dance in a Peruvian wedding. And part of me wishes that I had kind of just gone with it. Well, anyway, the next morning I had my biggest challenge because the day of the wedding, I really wanted the groom to be able to like chill out a little bit because I thought, you know, maybe he's a little bit stressed. And so for the bachelor's party, I went out and I put together like, we're gonna go have breakfast and then we're gonna go get massages. Turns out the massages in Peru are like 1/3 the cost of what they are in America. And also, if you're gonna be hating on me for being a dude getting a massage, it's probably because you've never had a massage. But I had to go and get it set up by myself. And I went to the massage place and I was like, hey, can we do some massages? And she was like, sure. And she like spoke enough English that it worked. And so she was like, well, you'll have to come back and like schedule the massages. She gave me a brochure, so I went and checked with the groom to make sure he liked it, and he wanted this one or that one or whatever. And then I went back to the place, and the lady who could speak English was gone, and all that was left in her place was this woman who didn't know a single word in English. And so I had to use my English. I was like, once es tres hombres por 30 minutos. Yeah, and I basically tried to tell her like, we want massajes with 3 guys at 11:30 and then 2 guys at 12. And surprise, surprise, it actually worked. The moral of the story being, you can goof off in high school Spanish as a child, and then I mean, you can maybe survive when you go to Peru. Though to be fair, before I left, April was kind of like grilling me like, you need to know this Spanish and that Spanish. Like, you don't know enough Spanish, you're gonna die. So she was teaching me some stuff. So the Spanish speaking triumph was accomplished, and it was time for the wedding. We went there, it was beautiful. They actually do have a lot more special music in Peruvian weddings than they do in American weddings, and they actually had people come and do a traditional Peruvian dance at the reception. So, you know, I was definitely thinking, man, I wish I'd brought that chicken suit. But it was so cool. They were so happy together. Everybody was really happy for them. They're both really good people, and it was just like such a heartwarming experience to watch all of that and to be a part of it, especially in another country. It was great that, like, you know, I didn't speak the language so well. A lot of them didn't speak English. To be fair, a lot of them spoke English way better than I spoke Spanish. But we came together around people from different countries getting married to each other, and it was a big gooey ooey celebration of love, and it was awesome. And then came me actually dancing, and here's a video of that. That's me dancing with the bride. I don't know salsa very well, so I just kind of made it up as I went and combined it with swing dancing, and that's what happened. But it was still awesome. But there was still technically technically like 1.5 last things that had to be accomplished before I could safely say that the trip was a success. Remember guys, this is 9 p.m. on Saturday. I leave the reception to go to the airport, but that is a Saturday. That Monday at 8:15, I had to teach class, and I had to teach another class, and it's the busiest week of the whole semester. So I leave at 9 p.m., I get to the airport, fly away at midnight. I get to the next airport at 6, going customs for forever. American customs are way grumpier than Peruvian customs, for sure. Peruvian customs are like, hey, welcome, come on in, bruh. And the American customs were like, we have to search your bag like 15 times. But I made it through that. I made it to the next airport, and then at the second to last airport, I found out that if I spent a little bit more money, more than I wanted to spend, I could get home sooner. And the reason that I did that is because if I hadn't, I would have been arriving home at 1 a.m. on a school night that I had to teach at the next morning. So I bought the ticket, and around that time, I found out that the next day, the school day, had been canceled for snow. Now, it had been 80 degrees in Peru, so it was a lot of mixed emotions at this moment, but I was not looking at it a second way. That doesn't actually make sense. I didn't look back. That works. I didn't look back. I hopped in that earlier plane, I got to Washington, D.C., and it was snowing there, so I had to drive for a really long time in the snow, and I didn't almost die, but I kept feeling like I was almost gonna die. Had my first ever Red Bull so that I could stay awake, made it home by 9 p.m., and then I had the whole day off the next day, and it was just a perfect ending to a beautiful trip. And that's the story, guys. I'll be completely honest, I don't really know how to tell stories, so I tried to tell this story in an interesting way, and I hope that you liked it very much. That was the story of me going to Peru, and I don't know what else to say at this point. I don't really watch a lot of story time vloggers, but I thought you'd want to know why I didn't post any videos for like a week. It was because I went to Peru. Thanks for watching, guys, and you know what? That's probably a good place to stop. So, thanks for watching, and I'll talk to you guys very soon. Unless I go to Peru again. Bye!